Hello, once again. A warm welcome to today's session on Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach. So, certainly, this is one of the very well known poem of the times of the 19th century, and definitely we have all come across to the study of this poem in our UG and PG courses. So, this will be a very inclusive understanding of the learnings, about the intentions of writing of this poem, about what we can have our take on this poem, and so on. So, roughly, we'll have a very precise understanding of this particular poem that is written none other than Matthew Arnold, who has been a very prominent poet of the English literature. So we know that he is known of being an English poet primarily, but also as we come to our PG courses, we also get to know of him being a well-known critic. So gradually, as we progress from UG to PG courses, we have a glimpse of him being a critic of other works, and those criticisms have been ingrained in our syllabus and in our minds, so on. So, if we talk about the historical understanding of his life, we see that he was born in the year 1822 in the United Kingdom. And he was born to the parents Thomas Arnold, and mother was Mary Penrose. So primarily through kind of most of his works, we get to know of Matthew Arnold criticizing the barbarianism, or we can say that he was attacking the contemporary world's lifestyle, manners, thoughts, taste, and so on. Now, if we talk about his poetry and in significance, Dover Beach, which is definitely one of the primary poem of significance in our syllabus, we see that most of his poems, similar to Dover Beach, holds a finer spirit and reasoning. So, this spirit of writing, this reasoning of Matthew Arnold is very unique. So, this is certainly not seen in many of the other poets of his time. So, he finds poetry as an act of reasoning that is expressed with probably, in a very concise manner. It has a brevity. And but why did he set to write poems? Because he felt that it is one of the powerful and beautiful medium of expression, or probably an expression that can be shifted to an application of one's own thought and ideas on life. So he expresses that poetry is attached to the emotion of a particular idea, and that idea is expressing a fact or a statement of truth that has a purpose. So Dover Beach is also a fine expression of Arnold's idea that was published in 1867 in his collection New Poems. So we can call this poem Dover Beach to be a lament of Matthew Arnold, because there is a melancholic tone, there is a yearning, there is a lament, and we see of him interrogating a purpose. So if we talk about that in the current study, he is lamenting over the loss of true living, and he kind of interrogates the readers, the audience out large, as to why are they so much occupied with the material world, with the material reliance. So he is lamenting over the loss of true living, the bridge between nature and man, and the world being occupied with lies, cruelty, violence, uncertainty, and importantly, ignorance. Now, if we move on to the primary understanding of this poem, we see that it kind of is a lament. It can also be said to be an interrogation or finding a reason or a purpose. And then we also see that there are certain references that are made to the Roman philosophers and writers like Sophocles and Homer. So we see that he was highly influenced by Sophocles and Homer, and certain references are also found in the poem Matthew Arnold. So, with the mood of sigh, lament, or yearning, or finding a purpose, we also see Arnold beginning this particular poem by playing in front of the audience a picture or an image of a tranquil, peaceful sea. So the poet here, that is Matthew Arnold, sets a melancholic tone that is voiced out through his easy and fine expression. So if we read Dover Beach, we see that it's written in a very simple, plaintive way that kind of allows the reader to relate to his own thoughts, his intentions behind the writing. So, as an audience or as a reader, we get to see the disturbed and unheard mind of the poet, that is Matthew Arnold, who seems to interrogate people. And what is he interrogating the people? So he's interrogating on the laws of faith on the natural world, the old conventions, goodwill, truth, austerity, and righteousness. So he allows us to relate with what is going on in his mind, what is he trying to question, what is the purpose behind this particular writing, and with that we also try to question ourselves that how far we are taken back by the idea of science, materialism, technology, progress, commerce, and so on. So he is questioning of the imbalance in our mind. He says that with the rising commerce, with the rising progression, with the industrial development, are we slowly getting more materialized? Are we getting capitalized? And somewhere these ideas that are cropping in our minds that we are associating it with is gradually shifting us or bridging a gap between the nature, the philosophy, the spiritual world as well. So we cannot say of Arnold negating the progressive and advanced growth. He is not asking us to discard the developmental process, but he grieves over the imbalanced thought that the contemporary period creates in the mind of us. So, if we are embracing science and progression, then is it necessary to discard religion and faith as well? So, he is trying to make us question ourselves that are we forgetful of our old values, religion, discipline, and more importantly, are we breaking away from those customs, those values, and pacing over to only growth? So, this unprecedented growth is kind of creating a battle in his mind. So, therefore, we can say that this poem Dover Beach debates over the degeneration of age. So, with the urge and demand over materialism, do we turn away from the religious values? So, he is making us rewind our thought. He is making us or taking us back to the mankind's values. And we see that he is trying to endeavor to take refuge in human love and spiritualism. So, how many things that we have learned so far is that this is a poem which is synchronized with melancholy, lament, and therefore, when a lament is coming over, when a melancholy is setting the mood, therefore, there is a reasoning, there is a purpose to it. The emotions, we have to understand the emotions behind Arnold's lament, and to that, we find that he is questioning our beliefs, our contemporary beliefs of the progression, and how far we are slowly getting detached from our old and conventional way of living, the spiritual faith, the religiosity, and so on. So, therefore, we see that certain binaries are being interrogated or debated, like science and religion, materialism and classicism, isn't it? So we can also learn that people are becoming more skeptical with time, with this progression, with science and technology coming in. And therefore, the treaties of mankind, the human relation with the outer world, the human relation with the philosophy, the religion, are gradually broken down. So there is an unchained process coming up. Now, while Arnold talks about all these conflicted ideas that we also get to study along him, he connects us to the natural world as well. So, when he begins the poem, he talks about a sea. So, he's standing by the window of his room and he is looking or gazing outside at the tranquil, silent, alone, and isolated sea. That sea that sets a very calm mood to himself, and he also allowed the reader to connect with that picturization to what he was experiencing while he was writing this particular poem. So he begins with a very peaceful tone, a calm tone, a serene tone, and saying that the sea is calm tonight. The poet looks outside and tries to assimilate with the nature, the tranquil sea, the breeze, the atmosphere, that makes him happy, that sets a connection that is earlier left unheard or palpable. So, like him, we are also gazing outside from the window, and like him, we are also asking ourselves to focus and experience this particular peaceful world. And with that, we also see there is a romantic association, a bond between Arnold and his wife. So, that is another aspect to this poem. So he also wants his wife to join and experience to what he is setting the mood as to. So he also calls to his wife and asks her to watch the beautiful atmosphere, the environment outside, the tranquil sea, the calmness, the calm breeze, and allow her to experience the happiness which was earlier devoid of. So, therefore, this questioning, the interrogation of the detachment of the natural world that we often fail to realize or recognize is what we are calling the epitome of the message of Dover Beach. So, Arnold uses the metaphor, the sea of faith. And when he says that, he uses this as a metaphor. He asserts that there was a time when religion and faith were untouched by modern ideals, modern ideas, modern thoughts, modern material thoughts, and revolution. So the sea of religious faith prevailed once, and the whole world was lapped in peace, which is now gradually vanishing. So again, we find a tone of melancholy, we find a tone of lament here with the loss of or disconnection or detachment of religion and the contemporary world. So there is a very gloomy atmosphere. There is a very gloomy contemplation of Arnold regarding the evil spirits of the contemporary world that detaches the human from the religious and moral spheres. So, like him, like Arnold, Sophocles contemplated on these aspects of well, and Sophocles back then during his time was also talking about human misery and what could bring to human death and eradication of the civilization of mankind. So, religious faith has been replaced by doubt and skepticism, which is very common in today's time as well. So, now with the dire realization and recognition of the prominence of natural world, religious faith, moral values, we are slowly getting immersed in darkness of ignorance. And if this continues, Arnold fears that we all might lead a life of hopelessness and helplessness. So the struggles of life will be more bitter, and there will be no amusement, no shingling, no excitement, and we are moving towards a decayed life, towards a spiritual darkness. So, with the reference and allusions to Sophocles and Egan, Arnold is also moving from the immediate and specific images that he's presenting in the first stanza to a more general argument, to a more general discussion that he's trying to create with the readers. So he talks that, like the eternal sea, human misery is a common experience. And this example from the past will make his argument for loyalty and love more poignant and universal. So he sets certain illustrations in these stanzas of the poem where we get to understand that what could be the cause of the human misery and what is he trying to argue. So, on one hand, we see of him being referring to certain great personalities like Sophocles and Aegean and others, and then we see that he moves from a general to a very specific argument where he's trying to implore about what is causing human misery, and in contemporary society, what could be the primary remedy for such a disillusionment. So, the poem, if we can say in short, is presenting the melancholy that is associated with the mind of Arnold and spreading the awareness of incompatibility between illusion and reality. So, he is not negating the disillusion caused by science and technology, but he's also trying to bring back the people, the readers, the world to the most innate relevance, that is the nature, that is the religion, that is the spirituality and the moral values. So if we want to read this poem, we can also read it to be a lament over the decline of religious faith in Victorian England, with the haunting image of the detachment of nature and the man, where Dover Beach is seen as a metaphor of the seemingly erosion of religion and moral values. So we can see that the metaphor of the sea, the symbolization of the sea, works on different levels in different stanzas. So human life is imagined as a sea bound and therefore characterized by a pressing life or a complicated life or a debatable life that is imagined to be solitary, that is imagined to be detached from moral values, where everything is falling upon a decline rather than an unceasing development or progression. So it is more of a material progression rather than a moral or self-conscious progression. So we are more associating with the capitalist's idea, with the traumatic condition of science, but and gradually drifting away from the natural theology ideas and conditions. And to this we see that the poet Matthew Arnold says that the vast cliff of the Dover Beach appears even larger in the flickering light. So the lights are flickering and have now vanished. So earlier what brought us light, what was optimism, what brought us a very fine life was religiousness, morality, the yearning of a progression of mind are slowly getting darkened and the light is being overcome with gradual darkness. So the silence of the night is broken by the breaking of the waves against the shore. When we are seeing that there is a communication between Arnold and his wife, or the poet and his wife, there is a dividing line between them. So that conversation, along with the tone of the poem, forms a very sad, subdued, degenerated tone on the humanity which was prevalent in the Victorian society as well. So, lastly, we can say that Arnold, being a poet of reasoning thought, is also carrying a modern sensibility which is shining through Dover Beach like a lamentation for a future mankind, which could be thoughtful, which could be spiritual, which could be moral, and how far we can create a very transparent connection between reality and illusion, and detach ourselves from the horror and cruel and the negative aspects of modern culture. So, in order to adapt with the growing and the changes of time, it is also important for us to balance it with religion, spirituality, devotion, human reasoning, love, faith, and all these attributes alongside the syntactical material requirement. So that becomes the pivotal understanding of this landscape that Dover Beach is creating. So it's a very, it's a poem that is emotions, that is carrying wide number of emotions, and definitely since it is relating with the worldly mind, it definitely has a universal appeal. So with this lament, we are gradually trying to protect our moral value, religious devotion, and understand the bitter experiences that is taken aside with science, technology, and so on. So one must accept the changes of time, one must allow progression to happen, one must allow development to take place, but without discarding what had brought us in here. So we cannot negate what has rolled us to a higher faith of living. We need to embrace the changes of time wholeheartedly, but not by discarding what was prevalent. So we need to resonate with the higher values, morals, the cultures, the norms, the values, the faith, the love, and so on, and therefore create a fine existence without retreating from who we are. Thank you all. So I hope you've liked this small session on Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach. So I'm sure that at least even one of you has been benefited out from this session. If you have any take which is different, or you would like to give a suggestion, if you want a detailed study, please comment or please mail on the description as given in the description down. Thank you for staying in connection. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.